Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. Thank you for joining us.
In what do we trust? I suppose I can trust that there are a few here who may bristle at the reading of something inspired by a psalm. And there are others who were somewhat comforted by its familiar cadence and were able to relax into hearing the words. Likely we trust, we rely on different things. In God we trust is the official motto of the United States. Was adopted by Congress in 1956, replacing E pluribus unum, out of many one, which had been the de facto motto since 1782. It's said that the origins of In God We Trust lie in the American Civil War, when Union supporters wanted to emphasize their attachment to God and to boost morale. In God We Trust was and remains for many a morale booster. And I expect there are some here today who place their trust in such a God. I don't know about you, but as an atheist-leaning agnostic, I can sometimes feel envious of believers because of the comfort they get from trusting in God's love, presence, omniscience, or healing capabilities. Now, my snarky self imagines that this can be a kind of shorthand for saying, it's out of my hands, or someone else is responsible for this, or not my table, hun. But for sure, it also offers true comfort and assurance, a balm to be able to trust that some God somewhere is in control, and not only in control, but actually making good and loving decisions. I can envy that. I even crave it in those times when I'm feeling particularly unsure or off balance or scared. Times like now. In the past, I've been able to create some meaning out of In God We Trust by translating it, by seeing it as an acknowledgement that everything is not in my hands and that there are some basic goodness, there's basic goodness and decency out there in which I can trust. Admittedly, this somewhat breezy translation rings pretty hollow. Still, it allowed me to be able to skate on the surface of trust, on an assumption of trust, without really having to proof test it. And perhaps something like that has been true for you as well. But these days, I can find it difficult to trust those things that I have previously thought to be reliably trustworthy. The rule of law, the Constitution, democracy, truth. What I see now is a co-opting of trust, redirecting it away from God or some basic goodness toward a few particular humans and human ideas that believe and behave as if they were God, with promises of the return of some lost greatness and supremacy. But perhaps what's worse is that a loss of trust anywhere seems to lead to a loss of trust everywhere. That is, if we're not careful to discern what it is that we can still trust. So what can we trust in now? As Fish Stark said in his newsletter from the American Humanist Association this week, we're in the fog of holy war right now. It would follow that, like the Union supporters during the Civil War, we need a morale booster. If we do not trust a conventional God, then in what do we trust? A quick word search tells me that in the UU principles, in the new statement of UU values, in the FUS this congregation's mission statement, and even in our aspirations, the word trust does not come up. Obviously, it's not a word we use much. Still, I really believe that humans seem to need to trust in something. You know, one thing I can generally count on are the sermon muses. Every week as I ponder what I'll say to you, I reliably begin with a kind of lost feeling. But I can also rely on something from somewhere showing up to guide me. This week, while I was on my way for a haircut and to have this crazy red put into my hair, so I grabbed a book that's been on my desk for a couple of months, Roger Housden's Keeping the Faith Without a Religion. And as I sat with my head covered in aluminum foil, I was stunned to find that of its 10 chapters, 7 began with the words, trust in. Do you know Roger Housden? He's what I would call a spiritual seeker, and I bought this book because over the years I have purchased several of his books in which he provides commentary on poems. The books are titled things like 10 Poems to Change Your Life, 10 Poems to Open Your Heart, etc. And I have loved his thoughtful eloquence expounding on poems that have become some of my favorites. So wow, here he is writing about trust in a book called Keeping the Faith Without a Religion. Perhaps you'll hear why he writes of trust in a book about faith when you hear what he means by faith. Faith, he says, is a non-rational intuition of the truth, goodness, and beauty that are intrinsic to life and that lie alongside the darkness in any human heart. It's a quality of knowing that recognizes the presence of realities we may have no words for, an intuition that can spur us to actions that transcend our drive for personal gain and even survival, unquote. Sounds like trust to me. And so does this. I have long loved this poem by Philip Booth called First Lesson. Lie back, daughter. Let your head be tipped back in the cup of my hand gently, and I will hold you. Spread your arms wide, lie out on the stream and look high at the gulls. A dead man's float is face down. You will dive and swim soon enough where this tidewater ebbs to the sea. Daughter, believe me, when you tire on the long thrash to your island, lie up and survive. As you float now, where I held you and let go, remember, when fear cramps your heart, what I told you, lie gently and wide to the light year stars. Lie back, and the sea will hold you. Lie back, and the sea will hold you. This is the kind of trust I'm talking about, and that I long for. A non-rational knowing that there are realities I have no words for, so let's just call it the sea. And whatever else, I can count on it. I can lie back and know that it's there. There is, I believe, something that each of us can count on, though it may not be the same for all of us. And I also believe that having some awareness of what it is that we can trust is not only good for our morale, but it's good for our living. Housden, the author of the book I began reading just Friday, he wrote a book, so he's given a lot of thought to this. So if I can be so bold as to summarize his eloquence in a few disjointed sentences, he proposes that what we can have faith in is an unfathomable mystery in which we are intimately joined in one great unity, seen and unseen, spiritual and material, and somehow that everything comes to us, whatever it is, that everything that comes to us, whatever it is, has its place in the puzzle of our existence. Now, we might call this the interconnected web of all existence, a pattern woven by life. Trust that we are woven into that pattern. So because I'm sure you're curious, the 7 trustings housed in names are trust the knowing, trust the mystery, trust the dark, trust the joy, trust the changes, trust the imperfection, and trust the letting go. And he suggests that we can trust that these things are part of a pattern that life weaves. Okay, so I get this. But somehow, accepting these things as part of life doesn't seem to really get me to the place of relying on something to hold me. Now, maybe I'm just not spiritual enough, or maybe I tend to trust the knowing more than the mystery. And yet there's something of a niggling little rub in this. It would seem that trusting requires us to choose to trust. That is, even without evidence. The choice to trust is the thing. And when I think of it that way, my heart opens to that possibility of living with more trust, even in troubling times, because I can choose that which I will put my trust in. And that what I put my trust in will shape and uphold my life. Now, of course, you can fill in the blank about what to trust for yourself. Here are a few things that I am choosing to trust, because I trust that in this trusting, I will be held and carried and supported. I choose to trust that there are lessons everywhere. No matter what I encounter, I can learn from it. I will grow and change because of it. I can build muscle because of what I choose to or am forced to exercise. When bad things happen, and let's face it, bad things happen every day, I can choose to see it as part of the texture of life. There are lessons in everything. I choose to trust that life is imbued with beauty and mystery. Yes, there's also ugliness and hard, cold realities, but all of these exist. The beauty, the mystery, the ugliness, and the reality. There's something about trusting that life is a big interwoven tapestry that helps me to see it all. And so even in those times that I'm sitting at the bottom of a pit, beauty and mystery and joy cannot be taken from me. They are always there alongside the darkness. I can choose to trust that beauty and mystery are always available to me and they're within reach. I choose to trust in my human potential to shape the world around me, if only that small bit of the world that I can see and touch. I trust that I have the capacity to make choices, even about what to trust. I am just a tiny part of creation, yet I am a part of creation. And what I do, the choices I make, matter. I trust that I can shape the world around me. I choose to trust in love. It may not always fulfill my longings. I may not have yet learned how best to express it. It may be elusive, and still, I choose to trust that love is the way to go, that it has a greater power than anything else to shape the world. Even when, in Mary Oliver's words, the voices around me keep shouting their bad advice, I choose to lean into, to lie back into love. I've heard it said that love is all we need, right? I choose to trust in the power of community, really trust. It's not easy, and sometimes I want to go to be a hermit in the woods. Still, I choose to trust that community is the way to go, and that's what I'm going to be speaking about next week, so stay tuned. But let me tell you a little story. Some years ago, on a minister's retreat near Thunder Bay, we visited Eagle Canyon, which is home to Canada's longest foot suspension bridge. It is 600 feet across, and it hangs at 152 feet above the canyon floor. And one by one, we started across the bridge, which is definitely an exercise in trust. And I found myself much less trusting than I expected, especially when the colleague in front of me started hooting and rocking to make the bridge sway back and forth. I froze. I looked down, way down to that canyon floor, and I looked at those thick metal ropes holding the bridge in place. I saw how my hands could hardly close around their thickness, and yet I could not trust it. I couldn't move, literally. And alarmingly, I found I also could not speak or scream, which might have been the more appropriate response. I was frozen. It seemed hours, but it may have been just a few seconds before the colleague behind me, and I didn't even know until later who it was because I was so scared, touched my back and said something reassuring. Maybe it'll be okay, or I got you. I don't know. I probably couldn't hear either. But what I do know is that presence, that assurance, allowed me to take one small step and then another, and together we got to the other side. Obviously, we often find ourselves in situations when it doesn't seem that what we are trusting upon will ever show up. And when I have thought back on that moment, I've often wondered if, had a bit more time passed, I would have been able to find what I trusted and to relax into it, even before that gentle touch on my back. Could I have chosen to practice trust and found my way across that bridge? But maybe it doesn't matter, because somehow what I trusted showed up. It found me, or I found it, whatever. The muses will come, the sea will hold you, and trusting that changes everything. In these days, when it seems that there is so little to trust, I encourage you to lean into those places that you know you can trust. Things you can rely on, even if it is simply gravity or the rising sun or the turning seasons. Because to live in these times, we need trust. Choose trust. So be it.
Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.